Hi everyone, this is Com 463 Case Studies, and this week we are talking about two different theories, the elaboration likelihood model and cognitive dissonance theory. And I'm going to try to make it as exciting as possible. I've got some neat examples, and if you have questions, we'll go over them in class, but I really like you to take some time to think about these different theories and how you might apply them. So let's get started. The first theory is called the elaboration likelihood model. And let's start off with just an everyday activity that we do. You're going shopping, right? Your list includes toothpaste, milk, and a new television. So, which purchase is going to require the most thought? I would argue that the new television would, right? Well, yes, we could say there's 50 brands of toothpaste, but most of us have a toothpaste we grab all the time. We know the milk that we want to buy. But if we had to buy a new TV, we'd suddenly think about, well, what size do we want? How many pixels should it have? Where is it going to fit on our wall? What do we want to use it for? And suddenly be putting a lot more thought into that decision. So let's explore how the likelihood model could apply to this example. So the ELM, as we like to call it, explains two different mechanisms by which communications are perceived by the receiver. So let's break it down a little bit further and then we'll go into how you can apply it. So if you look at the word elaboration, this means how much the individual thinks about arguments contained in the communication. Likelihood is the probability that an event will occur, right? Um, so the ELM says that there's two ways that we tend to process information. And the first way is on the right, which is the peripheral route. And this doesn't actually have to do with anything physical that happens in your brain, but you can think of this route as when you superficially think about a subject. So if you're going to buy milk or toothpaste or other everyday items, you don't put much thought into those. You just go ahead and buy them, automatic decision. Um, However, if you're going to buy a new television, you're going to think about it more deeply, and the ELM would call this the central route. Now, this was just a very simplistic example, but let's look at how we can apply it some more. So the central root means that you're going to think very deeply about an issue, that you're going to consider a lot of research and arguments and statistics and data and facts before making a decision about something and before deciding whether you're going to act. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. Anyone know Oprah's book club? Well, she recommends a book every month, I believe, and people read it. Why do they read it? Simply because Oprah recommended it. So according to the ELM, are people using the peripheral route or are they using the central route to process information about whether to read that book? ELM is going to say they're going to use the peripheral route because they're not thinking deeply about deciding whether to read this book. They are going on a cue, which is that a celebrity who they endorse or who they support or think is intelligent has recommended this book and she's vetted it, and so they're going to go ahead and read the book. So they're not going to put much time into thinking about it. Um, so in if you look at politics, do you think that political candidates use the peripheral route or the central route when trying to appeal to voters? I would say a lot of times political candidates use the peripheral route. They know that people aren't going to think very deeply about the arguments unless they care about the issues. So candidates will package things very neatly into like three steps, or they'll have campaign slogans that are catchy. They may use celebrities to endorse them, right? So you might have celebrities endorsing a candidate or newspapers endorsing a candidate, and people follow suit because they don't think deeply about the issues, right? So same thing with a home for sale, right? So if you're buying a home, are you using the central route or the peripheral route? I would argue that it could be either, but most of the time you're using the central route. This is a very important decision, one that you don't make a lot. You need to consider lots of factors. You're going to be weighing the price. You're going to be trying to anticipate future value, also considering location, square footage, lots of different things. So you're going to spend a lot of time thinking about this house One, because there's a lot to think about, and two, because it's a decision that is near and dear to you. So the ELM says that people more often use the central route if it's a decision that they care deeply about, or that matters a lot to them. Okay, so how to apply to public relations. So, when designing a campaign, you might think about whether your audience is likely to be persuaded by peripheral or a central route type of processing, right? So, say the issue or the cause that you're trying to convince people about is global warming, right? Would a celebrity but work best? Would it work best if you had a celebrity say, "Hey guys, you know what? Um, I just found out that global warming is a real thing, and I just want to let everyone know that we need to support the environment and do your part to recycle," or something like that. Or would it be better to convince people that to support, preventing global warming by having a scientist explain the causes of global warming? Well, it depends on your audience. So it's really good to think about your audience. So let's say your audience is a group of, I don't know, college professors. I'm one of them. For example, would probably be more persuaded by having a scientist explain the causes of global warming because it's an issue that I care about. That's probably important to me, and so I would not easily be persuaded by a celebrity telling me, um, telling me something very short, but not elaborating on the facts. Okay, let's look at this ad now. So this is a campaign. This is a health campaign by the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control. And you can see it's a campaign to get parents to give the vaccine, the HPV vaccine, to their children. So you can see, if you look at the ad, there's a cute girl. She's looking up, and then there's a quote. It says, "If there were a vaccine against cancer, wouldn't you get it for your kid?" Right? HPV is cancer prevention. Talk to the doctor about vaccinating your 11 to 12-year-old sons and daughters against HPV. So, would you, looking at this, think that they're using the central route to get to their audience or the peripheral route to get to their audience? This campaign uses a little bit of both, but it mostly relies on peripheral messaging. Why? Because people don't have more than a few seconds to view an ad. They don't have time to stop and think about all the pros and cons of the vaccine. So they use images such as the girl, they use a quote kind of directed toward parents, make them think of their own sons and daughters, maybe guilt them into getting the HPV vaccine. And then for those of us who want the central root processing, they've got a website, cdc.gov, where you can go and get more information. But they just don't have the space to put all the information and all the reasons why you should get HPV vaccine. So they just direct you to get more information from their website. So there's an example of a health campaign using the ELM model. Okay, let's move on now to cognitive dissonance theory. This theory is really fun. You may have learned about it in psychology class. So let's break it down. What does cognitive dissonance mean? Well, it means incongruity among thoughts or mental elements. A negative, unpleasant state occurs when a person holds two cognitions that are psychologically inconsistent. So when we have two thoughts that don't mesh well, we feel uncomfortable. So let me give you some examples. Example number one, I'm on a diet, but I just ate two pieces of cake. Uh-oh, that doesn't sit well with you. I should be working on my class project, but I really want to go to the movies. Ooh, those are two really inconsistent thoughts. Has anyone ever had that? There's another one. Sarah, who is married, is contemplating a rendezvous with Tom. So she's married, but she wants to go and see this other guy. So can you think of an example when you have felt dissonance, when you felt thoughts and the thoughts were kind of incongruent? This theory really exemplifies what's called self-persuasion. It basically says that in some ways we persuade ourselves. We persuade ourselves, not others persuading us, but we persuade ourselves. When we experience dissonance, we want to take steps to reduce it. So how do you try to reduce dissonance? Well, the theory says that there's two ways. One is to justify your actions, right? You rationalize, and we use that word all the time. Humans are famous for rationalizing their behavior. The other way is to change the attitude or behavior. So if you're on a diet and you're thinking about the cake, you have to either say, well, you know what, I'm not going to be on a diet, or you say, well, I'm not going to eat the cake. You have to do one or the other to feel good. All right. Along with this, there is another idea called internal versus external justification, right? So we can be internally convinced or we can get externally convinced about an idea. So in one example, study participants completed a very boring task. And then the researchers gave the study participants $1 or $20 to tell the next participants that they enjoyed the task, right? So after they told the next participants that they enjoyed the task, the researchers had the original participants fill out a survey to find out how much they enjoyed the task that they had just completed. So who said they liked the task more? Was it the recipients of the $20 or the ones who only got $1 to tell the others that they enjoyed the task? Well, the people that earned only the dollar said that they liked the task more. Those who needed $1 needed to bring their thoughts in line with their public behavior. So they needed this internal justification for this inconsistency. So they actually kind of changed their attitude and convinced themselves, you know what, that was a pretty fun task. Those who earned $20 had the external justification to say they enjoyed the task. It's like, yeah, I didn't enjoy this task, but I got paid $20 to tell them I like the task. So I don't need to convince myself that it was fun. Okay, so how can you apply this in a context of motivating others to change their behaviors, right? So, for example, would a parent pay their couch potato child to run or swim laps? Will paying the child change his or her attitude or toward exercising? What do you think? I would say that if a parent pays their child to run or swim laps, it might it might help in the short term because the child will do it for the money, but in the long term, it's not going to change the child's attitude toward exercising because they have this external justification. Okay, let's look at one last example. So imagine you're giving a speech, right? You're a part of a health communication organization. Giving a speech to young adults to use condoms when they have sex. Most of your audience does not consistently use condoms. They answered a survey prior. So which one gives them internal justification to start using condoms? Which is a more persuasive argument according to cognitive dissonance theory? A, if you say to the students, to young adults, failure to use condoms inevitably results in unattended pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections, including AIDS. Or if you say, if you think of yourself as a responsible adult, you'll use condoms to protect yourself and your partner. A or B? Choose now. Okay. Well, let's take a look. Okay. So if you say A, you're giving them external justification for using condoms. Like, okay, terrible things are going to happen if you don't use condoms. But if you tell them, if you think of yourself as a responsible adult, you'll use condoms. Then you're giving them internal justification. So if the listeners think of themselves as responsible adults and don't use condoms, there's a conflict between their self image and behavior, which will elicit cognitive dissonance. So they will, in the long run, try to change their behavior to to um, to come in line with their attitude. Okay. So there's lots of ways you can apply this to public relations. Here's just one. So maybe you want to persuade others to make a public commitment to your cause. So for example, you want people to announce that they support the Me Too movement. So if I publicly declare that I support the Me Too movement, maybe if I'm in a situation where I could take advantage of someone else, I wouldn't do that because I'm saying, you know what, I am a supporter of the Me Too movement. I think of myself as a responsible adult and obviously, I'm not going to take advantage of this other person when I'm in this situation. So it really can help people to start to change their behavior to reduce their dissonance. And there's lots of other examples we can talk about and maybe think about in class. So here is this is our lecture on the two theories.